Hello, everyone. This is Tomesha Faxio, and this is How I Create.
On this episode of This Is How We Create, we talk with Tomesha Faxio, who shares her journey from being a lawyer to becoming a photographer and writer. Tomesha walks us through the process of creating her book, Wash Day. This book celebrates the beauty of Black natural hair textures. Tomesha shares her experience of working with a literary agent and the unexpected opportunities that arose, including bidding and auctioning her book to major publishers. As a reminder, if you enjoy the show, please leave us a review on iTunes. It really helps other people just like you find the show. Now, enjoy my conversation with Tomesha Faxio. Tomesha, I am so pleased that you're on the show. Welcome to This Is How We Create.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to talk to you. I'm looking forward to it.
Well, me too, because you have the life of what is, I would call, a screenwriter's dream.
Oh, wow.
We're gonna get into it. I would love for us to start the show with you telling us a little bit about you.
Okay. Well, I grew up in California, which is only relevant because now I live in Atlanta, and I came here for college. I went to Spelman College. Actually ended up meeting my husband there. He went to Morehouse. I studied psychology in college. Randomly decided to go to law school. Sounds weird, but I decided I didn't want to pursue a PhD, and a lot of my friends were going to law school, and I thought, sounds like a good option. Let's do that. I'd never had a passion for it, but I developed a passion for it as I was going through the process. I honestly really love school. I love learning. And so the idea of learning the law was very intriguing to me. So did that, graduated from there, went to work for a major law firm, worked in-house, got interested in intellectual property law. And I realized now that may have something to do with the creative interest that was deep down that I didn't realize was there. And then eventually, as we'll talk about more later, started to develop some creative interest that led me away from the law and into photography and writing.
Well, let's bring it back to growing up in California. What was your childhood like? And did you have early exposures to art?
Okay, so visual art, not so much. I mean, beyond just the beauty of the city of San Diego in and of itself, which is a work of art. But my mother, she was and still is a professional singer. So I grew up going to her rehearsals and going to her gigs. I grew up around tons of music, Motown and all of that. And I was able to see in her a creative passion. My mom never enjoyed working like a regular job. She worked at a bank for a little while. She did, things here and there, but it always for her came back to singing. And she still sings now. She's kind of a local celebrity in San Diego. She gigs all over the place and she loves it. So while I was not exposed to visual art, photography, through her, I was able to see just what it looked like for someone to pursue a passion in a kind of a free, kind of abandoned kind of way. And I think that stuck with me, even though I would not point a direct link from that to what I do now. But that was my exposure to art growing up.
Did I read correctly that your aunt gave you a camera and that kind of sparked your interest in photography?
No, actually, so this is the story. I started to develop an interest in photography through videography. I started working in the space of videography. When I say working, I'm talking DIY. Okay, I pulled out my phone one day, saw the capabilities that the phone had, and decided to try to make videos. And I decided to try to make a documentary film with my phone. It's all along this journey of creative exploration that I was on. Anyhow, I was at a friend's house for a birthday party for her daughter, and I was taking photos with my iPhone. And I was telling her and her husband that I was starting to develop an interest in photography. I was like, I feel like I want to learn how to take pictures. I really want to kind of dive into this. They disappeared. I didn't really think about it at the time, but now I know why. They disappeared and reappeared with a camera bag. And they were like, you're interested in photography, and it was a Canon, one of the cheaper versions. I can't remember which one it was at the time right now, but he said, is this a camera that you would be interested in purchasing? And I was like, yeah. This looks good. It was a great starter camera. And they were like, well, do you want this camera? I was like, well, sure. I thought I answered your question. Yeah, sure. It's a model that I would, consider purchasing. And they were like, no. Do you want this camera? I was like, no, you guys, you're kidding. You're not trying to give me this camera. And you're like, no, take it. We don't use it. We think that you'll do better things with it than we will. So take it. And I was like, I'm not leaving here with this camera. I can't do it. They forced me and I took it. And that started it all. I credit them. I wrote, an acknowledgement of them in my book because that started the entire journey. I took that camera. I just started taking pictures of my kids. I went to YouTube to learn what aperture was and f-stop and just started taking pictures. I never became a super technical photographer. I just started learning by seeing, taking photos, looking at it, deciding whether or not I thought it looked good or not. And then eventually started posting pictures on Instagram. People liked the pictures. I was like, wow, maybe I really have a talent for this. And things just started to blossom and bloom from there.
Wow. So I want to go to college because I used to advise college students. And one of the things that they always kind of had a lot of angst about is that they didn't know what they wanted to do. They really wanted to have somebody give them a manual and say, this is what you should do. These are what your interests are. And we all know it doesn't work that way. You have to really figure it out. I'm wondering for you, when you were in college, even though you studied psychology, were there some creative courses that you took along the way?
Yes. So I laugh because when I think back to the moments that I'm going to tell you about, I do wonder why they did not spark a thought, an inclination towards anything creative. Well, first, I, again, was a psychology major, but I, took a hefty number of English courses. And there was a particular time that I recall where I was selected along with 2 other English majors to present a paper that I wrote in DC at this conference. My English professor was always very impressed with me. I remember having another English major come to me because she had gotten her paper back marked up with all of this, red ink, and I hadn't gotten that. And she was like, you're just such a strong writer. And I was like, oh, okay, well, thanks. And I remember feeling very accomplished, and feeling very good about the fact that I had been selected to present this paper. But it did not spark for me a thought, like, maybe you should think about becoming a writer. I was already doing a hefty amount of writing for psychology, writing papers and things like that. And eventually I would be working on my thesis. So I just thought of it in that way, but not as a creative space. And then I took a visual art class. And I remember my art teacher saying something to me along the lines of, you're really good at this. You might want to consider taking more classes. And I just kind of dismissed him. I had never really been exposed to art as a career. Again, singing, yes, my mom, but visual art, photography, writing, I just didn't have the exposure to understand that was a career path that I could choose. It just never occurred to me. So I look back on those moments and I wonder what would have happened had I heeded or listened to them. And then there's another instance I can remember from 8th grade. Can I go back to 8th grade?
Let's do it.
Let's do it. I was taking an English class in the 8th grade. And actually I was living in Japan at the time. My dad was in the military. And so I had written a poem as an assignment for class. And my English professor or English teacher, she came to me and said, listen, this poem is really good. I really think that you should, let me start over. This poem is really good. I really think that you should submit this to this contest, this, poetry competition. I was like, no, I was not comfortable with, honestly, I look back and I'm not exactly sure why I said no. I can only try to psychoanalyze myself as an adult. I don't know, but I didn't want to do it. She apparently got in touch with my father and said, your daughter is being a weird human and doesn't want to submit her very beautiful poem to this competition. Please talk to her. So my dad comes to me and says, hey, hon, why don't you want to do this? I was like, I don't know, but I just don't want to do it. I don't know if the poem just felt too personal to put out there to the world. I don't know, but I just didn't want to do it. And even then, I didn't see the talent. I didn't see the inclination towards creativity. It was almost like there was a block, like a mental block. I don't know.
Yeah, I think, each person's journey is so different. And in some cases, there are people's journeys, like it's so fast. It's like, they're, it's like that. And then for the rest of us, it's slower.
Yeah.
It's like a stew, a stew doesn't just happen like that.
Yeah.
It takes time to develop flavor. And I'm wondering if you were just waiting.
Right. And I really do believe that timing is everything and things happen the way they're supposed to. And rather than lamenting the time I spent as a lawyer, I try to, again, think of it like you just stated. It's a stew. It's a journey that all these bits and pieces along the way do come together to create something beautiful.
That's great. I have to mark that down as a clip that we'll use. I was like, normally as you're saying it, I'm usually pressing down so that I could mark the clips. Sorry about that.
Okay. So sweet.
So you end up being a lawyer, and at first, you enjoy the job, you enjoy what you're doing, and then you start not feeling so great. Can you talk to us about that?
Yes, that is a story. Okay, so I'm going to skip forward to around 2014 or so. I started out in 2006. So there's a long journey before then of ups and downs in my career that we would be here forever talking about that. But 2014, I was doing some very interesting work that I did enjoy. So I can kind of speak to that. By this point, I had determined that I enjoyed intellectual property law. I was doing a job at a law firm where I basically got to review shoe designs all day long. And if this is not enjoyable for someone who, again, deep down inside was a creative that didn't know it and, enjoyed intellectual property law, I got to shop for shoes as my job, basically clearing shoe designs for trade dress, trademark, design patent issues. So making sure that shoes that our clients were creating did not infringe on Nike or Adidas. So I really did enjoy that work. But there were some strange things that started happening at this law firm that led me to understand that I was being undervalued. I don't want to get into the depths of what was going on, but there were just some very clear signs that I was being undervalued. And it really put me in a place of really evaluating my career, evaluating whether or not this is something that I wanted to deal with for the rest of my life. I had certainly dealt with racism in the legal field, sexism, of course, in that space. And I just really started to evaluate, is this it? Is this what I want to do? And at that time, I remember just starting to search, what else is there out there for me to do? I had never really done that. What else can I do with a law degree? What else can I do that has nothing to do with law? I started looking around, just got on Google. What other things are there out there to do? And funny enough, around that time, I got a call from my husband randomly. He was at an event. And he had run into someone who had worked in advertising. And he was like, that sounds like something my wife would be interested in. So he called me and he was like, look into art direction, look into advertising. And I started looking into that. And while that's not what I do now, it gave me something to aim at. It gave me something to look at that would at least start to help me explore what creative worlds were available to me, because I really had no clue. So I decided, because I'm all about taking classes and learning things, I decided at that time, while I was still working at that law firm, to start taking art direction classes and copywriting classes at this advertising school in Atlanta. And through that experience, two things happened. One, I discovered talent that was just there, things that were just there. I was, again, someone who had never done any of this stuff before, but I was someone who, and this sounds weird to say, it sounds weird to say, but professors and teachers at the school were saying, look at what Tamesha is doing. Look at what she's doing. Telling other students, look at what she's doing. You should be kind of aiming for work like hers. I was like, what? It was saying, again, this was never something that I aspired to previously. It's just like when it's time and things are there, they're there and no one can take away or so when it was time for that stuff to start coming up, when it was time for those gifts to start showing themselves, they did. And so from that point, I started to just continue to explore. I ended up leaving that law firm and I started working at Spanx.
I'm curious as to what were you doing that the teachers and the instructors were asking other students to look at what you were doing and how you were thinking.
Okay. This brings me so much joy as I look back on this experience. It feels like quite a long time ago, but it's not. And so, okay, we had this particular class. It wasn't even really a class where we were learning anything. It was just a class that helped us explore whatever, so our instructor would give us a theme and we would go for the week and we would do something in this sketchbook that we had that had to do with that theme. And I would just get these out of the box ideas, that just were like out of the box. Okay. So for instance, there was this one assignment where we had to come up with a way to show a word visually that also described the meaning of the word, if that helps you understand what I'm saying. So I had did something like invisible, right? And so I, figured out a way to write things on a piece of paper. And then I kind of did this performative kind of thing where I had them turn off the lights and then had this black light and and everyone just went crazy. It sounds like a little thing, but it was so far beyond and so far removed from what everyone else was even thinking of. And I think that that's part of it. I was always just doing things that were just really out of the box and she said conceptual. She was like, I'm seeing conceptual work I haven't seen in years. And I'm like, oh, wow. Okay. But I would just get the craziest ideas and I wasn't afraid to do crazy stuff, just things that were really out of the box. There was another class that I took, typography. We were given these assignments every week, once again, where we had to write out typeface by hand. Okay, we had to draw it by hand. And the spacing, I can't remember the right terminology, but the spacing between letters and the leading between lines all had to be perfect. And we were eyeballing this, or at least I thought we were eyeballing this. I later found out that other people were using rulers. I had never used a ruler, okay? So we would do this, and I would say the first 2 times my instructor was able to mark, okay, this isn't perfect, this isn't perfect. After maybe the 3rd time, my work was perfect every single time. Eventually, I found out that my classmates were using rulers to make lines straight and things like that. They were like, Tomesha, you're not using a ruler to do this? And I was like, you guys are using a ruler? I was just eyeballing it. It was just a natural, So I think it was just, again, gifts and talents that had just been lying dormant for so long. We're just ready to get out there. And I was just bursting with creative ideas constantly.
Does this happen to you still? That you just have ideas that are coming in?
Okay, so I will say yes and no. This is what I've learned about myself. I do best when I'm given an assignment. When I am left to myself and I have just the world open to me as far as possible ideas, I'm overwhelmed. So I think what really helped me to thrive in that environment is I was given very specific assignments each week. And I was able to take that as like a trying to think of the word, box, if you will, and then break out of the box, utilizing the rules of the assignment, but then to create something a little bit bigger than the assignment versus just do something creative. Gosh, no, that's too much. So another time that I can recall this particular concept, and this is why I know that this is truly how I operate. When I was working at Spanx, we had this summer competition between the different teams in the company. They called it the summer series. And so, our team was the legal finance team. And then there's the creative team, there's the marketing team, there's all this. And they had us competing with each other for a prize at the end of the summer. And the way that the competition worked was they gave us assignments. And we basically had to do kind of like a scavenger hunt And when we found the thing that they told us to find or do, we had to take a picture of whatever it was. Okay. I was the first person to decide, bump these photos, which is funny because now I'm a photographer, but at the time I wasn't. Bump these photos. We're going to do videos. And so we started doing things that were just, again, out of the box. We would be given an assignment. And I think we had an assignment that had something to do with one of our products. So I decided to take our whole team and create a commercial based on one of our products. It was kind of like this mock commercial. It was just very funny. We created a commercial. And so, of course, we won that week. And then there was another week where we had another assignment, and I decided to create a music video. I basically took the song Frozen, created lyrics to go over it that had to do with the different products that we made at Spanx, got everybody in our team outside in Spanx shorts. We were wearing Spanx shorts and coats in the summertime, and I created fake snow, and we went out there dancing around in Buckhead making this music video. Again, and then that week we won. By the end, we had made a short film mocking the entire competition based on Hunger Games. So we took Hunger Games concepts and we made fun of this whole summer series game that the company had put us through. And of course, we won the entire competition. So again, I work best when I'm given an assignment and then I'm able to think within the context of that versus having just limitless possibilities. That overwhelms me.
Oh gosh, you're a creative director.
Oh my gosh, say it again.
You are. You're a creative director. That's what they do. The client comes in with a brief and then they execute on the brief. They come up with ways to, and they go outside of what the client thinks they want.
You're blowing my mind right now because this can be an aside. I don't know if this is, I'm actually in this space of what's next. And one of the things that I've thought a lot about, and one of the things that when I was at that advertising school that really, really resonated with me was creative direction. So it's just funny that you say that, and that makes so much sense. When I was at Spanx and we were doing all this stuff and I was making these videos, I remember one of my coworkers, she was watching the movie that we made and she was like, "Girl, what are you doing here?" She's like, "Why are you not out producing or something like that?" I'm like, "No, just never really occurred to me that I could do that, you know?" So thank you for saying that. Wow.
Yeah, that's what they do. You know, obviously, one of the things that's really interesting is the fact that it seems to me that your career, your creative career, if you will, is following a very unconventional road.
Yes.
And I'm assuming that being a lawyer probably taught you the things that you need to really outshine everyone else when you do whatever it is that you do, because lawyers just have a different way of seeing the world. They have a work ethic that's crazy. And they also have this like weird sense of humor. And we've had so many lawyers on this show. It's so funny. We've had so many lawyers that, you know, they're lawyers. And then when they leave that field, they just kill it everywhere else they go.
I really love that perspective. I've never really thought about it that way, but that makes sense. I mean, law school is difficult. I mean, and I really do like school. I like learning. I'm honestly considering going and getting a PhD at this point because I like school. But there is a level of rigor there that, yes, will translate into any other space. Even with writing my current book, Wash Day, which I know we'll talk about later, there was just a layer of perfectionism, which is not healthy, but at least it gets you to the point where you know you're going to try to put the very best product out there. I had a lot of specific things that I wanted for this book, you know, with regard to how it looked and how everything would read, that I do think that time just really fine-tuning certain skill sets really helped.
Why don't we spend the rest of our time talking about the book? Because I just really dig into this part. So you fast forward, you become a photographer, and then at some point you decide to write a book, and not only write the book, but really focus it on wash day. Talk to me about the process from idea to actually the books back there, right? And you have an image.
Yeah.
So talk to me through that process.
Whew, okay. So when I left Spanx, I left in 2019, fall of 2019 to pursue photography. I knew that I really needed to focus a lot of my attention on obviously continuing to build my clientele and to focus on commission work and build a business. Okay. So that was my first priority. But I also had fallen so much in love with documentary photography and storytelling by this time that I knew that it was important for me to do a personal project as well. So that was always something that was in the back of my mind. And so when I would say early on in 2019, I started trying to think about what I wanted that personal project to be. Over the course of time when I was taking photos, I did realize that I had this, I was drawn to hair for some reason in all of my photography. When I had someone who would be taking pictures and maybe they had straight hair, I'd be like, shake your hair around a little bit, mess it up. I was just really into the textures of hair and just how it read on photos. And so I knew that was something that I wanted to do. And so I knew that I wanted to focus my attention on the inherent beauty of hair, but then further than that, the inherent beauty of natural hair textures, mainly because many of us have been taught that those textures are not beautiful. And I wanted to do something that was almost like proof, art that basically confirmed what I already know to be the case, that our hair textures, the variety in which they come, are inherently beautiful in and of themselves. So I already with that idea, I knew that I didn't want to do anything where I was photographing hair that was perfectly placed or that was done. I wanted to show hair as it was. Okay. I don't know. I didn't know at the time what that would look like or how I would take those types of pictures. I was just kind of exploring the idea. So I spent a lot of time just looking through images of natural hair and just trying to understand exactly how I could showcase exactly what I was after here. So I came across this image, and this is an image that I feel like most Black girls probably have somewhere in a photo album. It was this mother doing her daughter's hair. And I just it just sparked a little bit of wait a minute, okay, something's here. There's something here that I feel like works. I mean, there's hair in an undone state. There's a process that's happening that I could document. There's action, there's movement. Okay, there's something here, but I still didn't have the idea of wash day at the time. Maybe a week or two later, I was having wash day with my daughters. And as I was looking at their hair, as I was looking at the water running through it, as I was looking at the process, looking at our products that we had laid out, and just everything that I was ready to invest in that wash day, it clicked. It clicked. And I went and grabbed my camera in that moment and started taking test shots of my kids. It was the best aha moment because it checked all the boxes. It checked the box of being documentary. It checked the box of telling a great story. It checked the box of showing hair in the process state, not in the finished state, styled and edges laid and all of that, but the process and the beauty of the curls and the coils and the kinks and all of those things. And that is what I most wanted to showcase in this work. And so as the idea continued to develop and I started thinking about mothers and daughters, a lot of women in my generation who grew up believing that their hair was ugly because it wasn't straight, growing up getting relaxers, suffering from hair breakage because we were over relaxing and putting too much heat in it and damaging our hair. But then, coming out of that through, the natural hair movement, many of us, learning to care for our natural hair, learning to love our natural hair that for years and for most of our lives, we've been told we should not. Those moms now have daughters who they are teaching completely different things about their hair, and that was my experience. And I knew that was the experience of a lot of other Black mothers. And so I started reaching out to other moms, asking them hey, what do you think of this idea? Think about it. The response that I got from other Black women just solidified the necessity for this story, the validity of telling it, the need for it, the need for representation, the desire for Black women to tell their natural hair stories and to show how they are teaching their daughters something different than what they had learned. And that's kind of the short version of how everything developed and how the idea evolved into what it is now.
Okay, so I want to get into the nitty gritties.
Yeah, let's do it.
Found your talent. How many families did you photograph?
There were 26 families.
Okay, so 26 families. And how long did the project take?
I started shooting in fall of 2020. And I would love to talk about what 2020 did. Woo! We may not have time for that, but I just, if I could sneak it in at the end, but fall of 2020 is when I started shooting. Fall of 2021 is when I got the book deal. Fall of 2020, what are we in now? 2024? So fall of 2023 is when I think I selected my final images. So it's about a 3 to 4 year project.
You knew you wanted the book, and I'm assuming, did you pitch it to several publishers to get it? Talk to me about that process.
There's so much juice here. Okay, sorry. So when I started the series, I had a very clear vision for it. I knew that I eventually wanted it to be a book. I had never had a clear vision in my life about anything. So fall of 2020, I wrote down every single thing that I wanted to happen with this series. I wrote that I wanted to get it published in an art magazine as like kind of like the first presentation of it to the world. Okay. I didn't even post these pictures on Instagram because I wanted it published somewhere first. Then I knew, I also wrote down that I wanted the pieces exhibited in an art show or an art exhibit. Then I wrote that I wanted to find a literary agent because through another friend who is an author, I learned that that is really important and helpful, especially for a new author looking to find a publisher. And then, of course, I wrote that I wanted to get, a book deal. Everything in 2021, every single thing on that list happened in the order. Okay, so January of 2021, I was notified that I had been selected by an art magazine to be featured in the publication. It's a publication called Ain't Bad. And this was the first time any of my work had been published in print. And so that was the first moment that kind of validated or made me, and I know this, I don't know, this is kind of like tricky territory here, but it made me feel validated as a photographer and as an artist. So it's my first time putting work out into the world like this. So for me, it was like, oh my gosh, I'm really doing this, And then I got notified in about May of 2021 that I had been selected to show pieces in an art show here in Atlanta. Again, another moment where one, I was like, oh my gosh, everything is happening the way that I hoped it would. And I was doing the work, submitting it to places and sending it to people and putting the work out there so that these things could happen. After the art show, I was like, it's time to start looking at a literary agent. I feel like it's got enough, media attention. There were some other publications that had started showing the series. And so I was on the phone with a friend and I told her, I'm going to start looking for a literary agent. And she had just listened to a podcast where there was a literary agent on there talking about the work that she does and the fact that she is focusing her attention on Black authors. And she's like, you should reach out to her. But she was a white woman and I wanted a Black agent. It's like, this work is very Black. And I feel like a Black agent just makes sense here, but I reached out to her anyway, honestly, as practice. Like, let me just get my first pitch out and just see how it goes. She responded same day, which I did not expect. I expected it to take months to get an agent. That's what I thought would happen. She responded the same day. I talked to her maybe the next day. And then the next day I signed with her because she was perfect. She was perfect. And to this day, she has been perfect. She has been everything. I love her so much. And this is Kate Woodrow, Present Perfect Literature. But she has been the most wonderful agent and I value her tremendously. And so from that point, okay, so now we're finally getting to answer your question. From that point, she helped me take what I thought was a a book proposal and turn it into a real book proposal. And we worked on that for a couple of months, just writing everything out and adding in the right images. She showed me how to write a sample of what the book might look like. So we pulled all that together. And then her job was to start sending that proposal to publishers. Okay, so the way everything worked was, my agent would send the proposal to publishers and editors that she thought would really appreciate the work. And so if an editor responded favorably, we would set up a call and have a conversation to talk more about the vision and, their thoughts on the book, my thoughts on the book, and see if it was a good fit. So I spoke to three publishers, and I'm going to tell you that I was shocked at who they were. As a first-time author, a photographer who had really only been shooting for 3 years prior to this, I was completely excited about a small, a smaller publisher. I just, and I would have been completely happy with that. I never expected 2 of the big 5 to be on that list of publishers that wanted to talk to me. This was never something that I expected. And so when my agent reached out to me and said, Clarkson Potter, Penguin Random House wants to talk to you, I said, no, they don't. Really? Are you kidding? What? HarperCollins wants to talk to you. Who? What are you saying? The whole process was so sublime, obviously, but then just shocking to me. Just like, is this really happening? I'm on the phone with these people. And I remember very specifically feeling a sense of, what do they call that? Imposter syndrome. Like, should I be sitting in this seat? This feels strange. And I remember asking the editor at HarperCollins, it's like, I'm wondering if I need to get, a writing partner for this because I've never written anything like this before. And she was like, no, your writing is great. She's like, you don't need a writing partner. Like, why do you think you need that? And I'm like, I don't know. And then I also was telling her that I was thinking about getting a history professor or someone like that, or someone with a PhD in history to write a short history on Black hair for the book, because I didn't feel qualified to write that. And she specifically said, she's like, you are an expert. You've done the work. You've done the research. Like, what makes you think that you can't write it? And I was like, you've left me no excuse. I should stop doubting what I'm capable of as I'm sitting on this call with a big 5 publisher. And I never thought that is what I would be doing. So that all happened. Once we get through this season of having those conversations and meeting with those publishers, the next thing that happened was my agent set up a closing date. I think that's what it was called, where all of the publishers that were interested had to submit their proposal. Okay. So 2 of them ended up submitting proposals, Penguin and HarperCollins. Okay. So what happens then, and I didn't realize this, I thought they submit their proposals, we look at them and we pick one. She said, oh no, hun, you're so cute. No. Now, I was like, this is great. This is
Bless
awesome.
your heart.
Exactly. It was a very, bless your sweet, naive heart. She's like, no. Now we go to auction. I said, whoa, what? So here I am in a situation where I have 2 of the big 5 publishers bidding over this book. It was one of the most amazing days of my life. Wow. Yeah. It still takes my breath away when I think about it.
And isn't it wonderful that this is just the start, right?
Sorry, that was really loud.
But that's it. This is the beginning.
It is
This
incredible.
is what the beginning looks like for you.
And I am incredibly humbled, incredibly thankful to God. I feel so much gratitude because I know that it's not just because I'm just so great and so talented. There's a story that was birthed from, and I could go back as far as, waking up on Saturday mornings at grandma's house. My grandmother had a salon adjacent to her kitchen, and I would wake up on Saturday mornings to the smell of hair grease and hot cones, and that could have been the start of it all. Who knows? But I think timing, when it's time for something to happen, there's not really much that can stop that train. And I think that that's just kind of the flow that I got on in 2020. And I'm just so grateful that I took the leap, because honestly, there was a time in 2020, and I'm sure we all can attest to some things, that I put that idea on the back burner because, COVID. And I was on the phone with a friend of mine who actually is in the book. She's also a writer. And I was telling her about this idea, telling her about Wash Day. And she just stopped me. She said, girl, if you don't get off this phone right now and start that project immediately. I was like, oh, well, COVID and da-da-da. She's like, no, wear a mask. It'll be okay. You need to start now. And I'm so glad I listened to her. I'm just so glad I listened to her and didn't. I started like the next week after that call. And then here we are now.
Look at you. Look at you and what you did. Look what you did. Can you show us your book?
Oh, yes. Let me go grab. And then that face.
Wow.
It's just, honestly, looking at it. Oh, my Lord.
It's amazing.
It is, I will say that one of the most dreadful parts of this was selecting images, because as you can imagine, I took thousands, and to try to trim it down to what's actually in here was, as an artist and as a fellow photographer, I know you know.
Well, did you have help, or did you do your own selects?
I selected every single image myself. Wow. And I wish that had not been the case. But I think, honestly, as we go back to just certain things about being an attorney, I think that it was for the best, because I think that I would have looked through and been like, why did they pick that one? No, I would have wanted this other one. So the fact that I am solely responsible for every single image in this book, I can rest in knowing that it is as I would have it to be. So,
oh gosh, I am the chair of the diversity committee for APA, the American Photographic Artists. I think you would be really great for us to invite you over to talk about your book.
I would love that.
And about this process. That would be so cool.
I would love that. I would absolutely love that.
So I'll put that.
Yeah.
And then I'm also on the board of the Chicago chapter too. So I
shot, I think, about 3 families out in Chicago. Is that where you live? You're in Chicago?
Yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I shot 3 families in Chicago.
Wait, so hold on. You mean you traveled?
Yes,
across?
I did.
I did. See, you leave things out.
Okay.
This is even more.
Yeah. There's so much. Yeah, there's so much to this journey that there's no way that we can cover it all. And this conversation has just been such a blessing. I just want you to know. But yes, so I traveled. I didn't travel as much as I wanted to. I really wanted to get further out to the West Coast. But again, around the time when all this was happening, still pretty COVID-y, but I did travel to Chicago, DC, North Carolina. I think that's it. Honestly, having a failure of memory, but a few cities around too. Initially I was thinking, I just want these different perspectives, and I just want to make sure that I show the diversity of the process, but there really isn't that much beyond just different mom to mom. And so as a team, as I was doing the traveling, me and my editor, we decided that the multi-state aspect of the book was not nearly as important to really focusing in on each family and giving them that focus. Because at first I was like, I'm going to go to all these cities, and I'm going to, when I go to Chicago, I'm going to photograph all these people, and I'm going to go and I actually really had to stop and realize that was going to take away from being able to really dive deeper. And so I didn't do as much traveling as I initially set out, but I did just enough.
So incredible. Yeah. Gosh, we were joking about how I sent you so many questions that I could potentially ask you for this interview. And I think we've gone through 3. But we knew there was no way we would go through all of them.
I know.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I wanted to mention one other thing. I'm trying to figure out a good way to lead into this. But one of the most critical things that I've learned on this journey and on my creative journey is just the value of trying new things, even if you think it's something that maybe you cannot do. So for me, again, trying photography with no background in it is the first kind of example of that in my life. The other, which directly relates to this book, when I set out to do this, I was really focused on the photography, of course. I was not really thinking about the writing part. I actually wanted to bring in a writing partner because I'd never written. And I'm just so grateful that she said no. She was not available and she couldn't do it. So that pushed me to write the essays myself. So this is my first attempt at writing outside of, the legal world. And I'm just so grateful that I got the opportunity to do it. It was such a wonderful experience. It started out, I was really going to do very, very brief essays, maybe a couple of paragraphs at most. But as I started writing and thinking about Black hair and thinking about these natural hair journeys, all this history and social context started to come out. And I was able to really dig deep into the why behind a lot of the ways we view ourselves, the way we view our hair. And I was so grateful to be able to infuse that into this book. So it's all almost, 60-40 photography to text here, which is not typical for a photography book, but I'm really glad that I got the opportunity to do that.
But I mean, the stories of these families matter just as much as the tradition of wash day.
Exactly. And I wanted to make sure that I did justice by each of these mothers' stories because there's so much more than just, LaTroya went natural in 2009 and this is what she did and that's that. There's also this conversation about how, this particular mom, when she first met her natural hair for the first time as an adult, wondered why it didn't look as slick and curly as some of the influencers she was seeing online. And so she really was spending a lot of time trying to force her hair to look like theirs and realized it never was going to. And that she was chasing something that she had been taught is good hair. And so then I go into the history of good hair, bad hair, and just the lingering aspect of that within our community. And I'm able to really confront a lot of issues that we are still dealing with. So it was just such a great opportunity to really talk about these things and hopefully bring healing to Black women, children, people, and beyond our community as well.
Tomesha, have you thought about your legacy? Because I think, and I'll give you the context for this. One of my favorite books is by Bill Bryson, and it's on home. And it's all about the history of home, the history of how we construct our houses and why.
Yeah.
And what is really interesting in his ability to have written his book, he went through and looked at the historical narratives that were left behind by people like 200, 300, 400 years ago. And I'm just thinking about your book and how you're leaving behind this history of these families and of how we are thinking about, but I mean, it's so true. You have this legacy, that you have this thing that you've crafted, you've given birth to, and it's going to be here forevermore, right? And it's going to enter into the lexicon. Yeah. And it's so true. And it's also something that all Black people go through. Every single one of them. We go through wash day. We have it at my house.
Yes.
And to let Black children know that this is something that culturally we all go through. And here are how these families interact with wash day. I mean, that's such a beautiful gift that you've left for everyone.
Thank you for that. That is exactly what I was hoping to accomplish here. I wanted to do something that, again, was a gift to our community, that children, adults can look at and say, my hair presented as art is really beautiful. One of the greatest moments that I've had is when I showed, again, pieces from the series in an exhibit. And one of the little girls who was in the image was able to see herself up on a gallery wall, not with her hair done in any fancy particular way, but her hair just as it was, being looked at as art. And I feel like that is not something that we have had enough of. And I wanted something out in the world that my kids could look at that all of our kids could look at and say, wow, I'm beautiful. My hair is beautiful. So thank you for saying that. That is so full circle for me.
Well, Tomesha, I would love to hear about what's on the horizon for you.
Yes.
What do you have next? What's happening?
Yes. So right now I've already completed a pitch for a film version of Wash Day. I would love to do a documentary film version. I know your face. I love it.
That's so great. How amazing is that?
Yes. Yes. Funny enough, a lot of people who have seen these images have said, oh, I thought these were stills from a film. And I'm like, yeah, one day. And so that is definitely something that I'm looking at. I'm very excited about, and I think would kind of fill in some of the place, or not fill in gaps in the book, but just kind of do what a book can't do and do what images can't do, and allow these women and children to speak for themselves. And so I'm really excited about that. I also have ideas for book 2 and 3 that I'm working on with my agent, and I'm super excited about. One of them is hair related, the other is skin related, and I really want to confront the issues of texturism more. I talk about that in Wash Day a lot, but I kind of want to focus in on it very specifically, because I think that just within the Black community, we really still struggle with that. And then I want to confront colorism in another series where I center dark-skinned people. So one series would center, I say 4C hair. I don't know that we all really know what that is, but focusing on the tightest hair textures and showing how beautiful it is. I think we really are still struggling with treating all of our textures as equally beautiful, and I want to confront that. The same with skin tone. So those are 2 things that are in the works.
Well, I can't wait for it. What I would love to do with this episode is to get several of your books and have a giveaway. Is that something you'd be interested in? All right, so I'll go ahead. I'll pre-order. What's the best place for me to order them? I know
any local retailer that you like is completely fine. If you go to the Penguin Random House website, there are a list of purchasing options, but the book is available at local retailers online up until the book is released on April 2nd.
Okay. Pre-orders.
Yes, yes.
Pre-orders are good. All right, I'm a pre-order.
Oh, thank you. I'm trying to get my community of friends to understand how important they are. I don't think anyone really knows. They're like, I'll get it when it comes out. What's the big deal? Pre-order it.
This was so much fun.
Oh my gosh, this was really wonderful. I have really enjoyed meeting you.
I really enjoyed meeting you. This is, well, please keep me updated. You're working. You are so incredible. You have such drive. And,
thank you.
The thing is, I find that the people who are able to make this creative career work are those who've had another career, because you have the skills, you have the drive, you know how to produce. And having a creative career, it's all about producing. You have to just things out.
Thank you for saying that, because there are always those moments where I will spend some time lamenting about choices. If I had done this sooner, where would I be? But again, I know that timing is as it should be in my life. And so I hold on to that. So I'm always grateful when someone reminds me of that. So thank you.
Oh, perfect. Have a good weekend.
You too. Thank you so much. And I look forward to keeping in touch for sure.